Hello and welcome to the show. This week's FailRace versus the community, we would go racing with B-class cars that had to be fitted with race tyres. The kind of initial theory with this as an idea was to have plenty of nice handling cars for us to go racing with. However, me included, we all decided that the best way to choose our cars, to build our cars, was to go for something as bad handling to start with as possible, so we could put race tyres on, fit it into B-class, and still have something that was quick in a straight line. Basically, it didn't quite work. However, it did throw up an interesting selection of vehicles to go racing with. The Transit here, struggling a little bit, certainly, with the braking, while a Bugatti and a Valiant Charger would get to the front early on and start pulling away. Ferrari 166 would be up in third. As I said, I didn't really go with my own idea. I've got an Alfa Romeo 8C, the one from 1932. Fairly skinny race tyres on this, but with near 300 horsepower and weighing around 2,000 pounds, it was a monstrously fast accelerating car. In fact, also very good under brakes, surprisingly. In all of this, we were 3 wide coming down the start-finish straight. I got a little bit unlucky. I got tangled up and got boxed in on the opening lap and dumped to the back of the field, but the Alfa Romeo made short work of just about everything down the straight, and if it didn't beat them down the straight, chances are it beat them in the braking zone. As E30 M3, I think there was a car not showing up on the replay. I think I got tagged by that, and it was a very weird way to go around. If it wasn't an invisible car somewhere on the replay, yeah, the Alfa was a beating. I see how quickly it's caught up to the back of a Chevelle. Now that thing is not slow. That thing is not slow at all down the straights, but trying to work your way up through the pack, well, funnily enough, you run into a lot of traffic. The Chevelle was pretty quick too. But that's, yeah, trying to make its way through the traffic. We were looking at going 3 wide with the Montreal. That's never going to work. Just duck back into line. You sort of pick which car you think is going to do best, to go the fastest here. I opted to go to the outside to try and sweep round that Alfa Romeo. Even with as quicker a car as I had, making it through the pack was not the easiest thing. There would be a big old MG battle. If I'd remembered I had this car in the game, I would have probably built one of these to run in this particular event. Sadly, I did not remember about the MG being in the game. These two would change positions down the start-finish straight. A better run for the light green car. The dark green car, though, having a look, trying to get around the outside at the first hairpin. It's a tough manoeuvre to pull off. It's a long way around that particular corner. In the end, the dark green not quite able to make that one work, although still relatively close as they head down this next longish straight into the braking zone. But again, not quite close enough to have a look for a way past. The Chevelle, well, eventually I would find a way past and run off up the road. However, Chevy would get stuck behind a Clio, was unable to pass this Clio V6. They were surprisingly evenly matched down the straights. The Chevy's best opportunity came with the Clio making a mistake out of the final corner, touching the grass, and that, of course, will compromise your run all the way down that straight. As I said, around the outside of turn 1 is very difficult. Can be done, but it is very, very difficult, with the Chevy just about managing to keep his nose along the side as it bounces up across the curb. But even if you do manage to keep alongside all the way down here, it's still going to be stuck on the outside for the next corner. Can't quite hold it there, and eventually the Clio would get the position back. While first and second would be long gone in this one, a long way down the road, and having a pretty lonely time. Third was far from that. The MG continues to look for a way past the Ferrari, but was unable to. Now, this did go on for a good few laps, and at various points I looked through the replay, pretty much the same thing happened almost every single time at turn 1. The Ferrari would cover the inside, the MG would try to look for a way around the outside, couldn't do it, would have to fall back into line. This was the best opportunity that the MG had, but trying to get the pass complete was proving very difficult. Evenly matched in terms of lap times. The Ferrari gains its speed down the straights, the MG a little bit better through the corners, but yeah, both fairly similar overall. Meaning every time they got to a corner, the Ferrari was just that little bit too far away, and the MG was unable to do anything about finding a way past. At the front, and victory would go to the oldest car in Forza 7, the classic Bugatti, with many many cambers going on at the front, would be, well, very, very fast around this Sebring circuit. Having got to the lead on the opening lap, able to pull away from the Valiant Charger in second. Only one car was actually, I say only one car was even vaguely close. My 8C was fairly close to the Bugatti in terms of lap time. Could have been interesting had I not started all the way, well, I'd not been dumped all the way to the back, because when I was released from traffic, the 8C absolutely flew. In the final couple of laps, I closed a huge gap towards this Civic, desperately trying to take a 7th place with the drag race towards the line. And the speed of the 8C was just. The Civic tried to shuffle me across, but the Alpha was too fast, and I would get the position on the run to the finish line. Well, yeah, hadn't had a greatest of starts. It was proving to be a very, very quick car. To the podium, and Impega would take victory with the Bugatti. Mugen would have a very lonely race in second with the Valiant Charger, while Invisible AK would hold on to third with the Ferrari. Race number 2, and we would head to the Lime Rock circuit. Unfortunately, the 2 cars on the front row would get held in a loading screen, and, well, all things considered, we made it through quite well, with the front row cars getting stuck. Not so good for them, but at least they did get going in relatively quick time, didn't get stuck on the grid. And it was, yeah, a little bit of a mess. I had a fairly kind grid position. A big sim steering twitch, unfortunately, would lead to a Bugatti further back off the circuit. Now, here is a lot of corners for cars like my Alfa Romeo to try and deal with. My car predominantly designed to be a very fast accelerating car, and everything else a little bit secondary. This was always going to be a tough circuit. However, we moved up past a Clio V6, and it wasn't as terrible to drive as you might think, the 30s Alpha. However, of course, there were always going to be cars better. If you didn't go down the route of go for something cold and quite bad handling, if you went for a modern car, the chances are you were going to be down in terms of power, but they would be very good around the corners, especially at a track like Lime Rock. This Mazda RX-8 was started a fair way down, but was really marching up through the field. Got to the inside of both the BMW and Mercedes through the first corner there to pick up 2 positions. Yeah, being able to carry immense amounts of corner speed, funnily enough, very, very useful around the Lime Rock circuit. At the front of the field, and it wouldn't be long before everything descended into a 4-car battle for the lead. The RX-3 leading the way was pretty damn quick down the straights, but not as good through the corners as the Focus. The Focus nowhere near as good through the corners as the MX-5, but left the MX-5 for dead down the straights, and my Alpha was faster than everything down the straights, but a bit of a handful, as I promptly demonstrated by putting a wheel on the grass and causing myself no end of grief. Now, this had been going on for a little while. In the end, the RX-3 actually gets a twitch almost as they come up over the crest, and that's just enough. Unsettle the cars, clip the fence, pings across it, and slows it down enough to allow the Focus to get past. Again, when that opportunity arises, the Focus is not going to miss that one. The Ford does actually run wide on the exit of the final corner, though, thankfully for him, as does the RX-3, and that red Mazda has got an MX-5 for company as well as they head down towards Tower 1. The Ford will go defensive, and there's nothing that the RX-3 can do. The MX-5 making a little bit of a mistake. I would recover my car up into third and would now start looking for a way past that RX-3 myself. As I said, interestingly, the 8C was amazing under braking, although that doesn't mean I couldn't ask too much of it into the first corner. I had to go up the inside, only just got the car stopped. It was a nice cutback from that Mazda. In fact, I had many Mazdas around. I had many noisy, rotary, buzzing Mazdas now kind of behind me and alongside me as we came up to a to one of the back marker cars. It's a little bit sketchy down here. He did his best to try and keep the big muscle car out of the way. It's always side by side as we come up over the hill. But neither of us here, well, yes, we've got race tyres. Neither of our cars here are particularly amazing to drive. The RX-8 can carry all of the corner speed, but there's nowhere to go because he's got two fighting often sideways cars ahead of him. And we're back down around this final corner once more. Certainly not flat out with our cars. The MX-5 carried so much speed through the first section, but does struggle later on around the lap. Having seen what I did last lap, I figured out where to brake for turn 1. The RX-3 was ready to try and do a cutback, was ready to try and get underneath me if I pinged my Alpha off into the distance. However, that time around, I got it stopped. I don't know quite how come how the brakes were so amazing on that car. Often some of the old race cars can be a bit sketchy with the slowing down, but the 8C was, yeah, really quite impressive. It wasn't just a big train of cars up at the front that were having a good fight. This was the battle for, I think it was about 10th, 11th, 12th and 13th place between a Clio, a Fast and Furious Corvette, Mercedes 190E, a Golf, all involved in this. The Corvette, the fastest of the lot, down the straights. Mercedes tries to get to the inside. He just can't quite pull it up in time. Big oversteer moment from that 190E as he then slips and slides his way off of the circuit. The Golf will say thank you very much, picking up a couple of positions in all of that. Sometimes, we've seen Lime Rock races where we've had a lot of vehicles end up spreading out. It's not always the easiest of circuits to overtake either, but here, today, it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun. With the Focus having got to the lead and us all squabbling over second place, the Ford was able to pull out a pretty sizable gap, actually, in the closing laps. The Focus, did prove to be a very, very good car around this circuit. The battle for second, well, that was, considerably more intense. While, at least in this one, the leaders did have some excitement early on. It was a little bit lonelier end to the race. Second place was crazy on this final lap. So I had got myself to second, but the two much better handling Mazdas were hounding the back of the Alpha. Every time we got to an acceleration zone, you'd see the Alpha pull away, but for a lot of this lap, that's not really that important. The MX-5 and the RX-8 able to carry much, much more speed through these corners, but I was determined not to give them space on the inside. I'd have to make them go the long way round, and even with the Alpha's difficulties, that's not so easy to do. Around the final turn, I get too much oversteer. RX-8 with a better run, but the Alpha with better power to weight ratio, better straight line speed in general, kind of fights back. Now, as we crossed the line, we didn't know who got second place, and after looking at the photo finish, I'm still not sure. You see, the way the replays work in Forza 7, we have to run the race one lap longer than it actually wanted to be, and the final lap be a cooldown lap, because otherwise the replay glitches out when you cross the finish line. So we don't have an official Forza ruling on this one. What we do know is that Forza counts cars as finished when the wheels cross the line, rather than when a front bumper or a splitter cross the line. And this is the closest finish we've ever had between two cars. I genuinely don't know. I think I'm going to have to call it as a tie, because they're literally neck and neck. The RX-8 splitter does cross the finish line first, because that's a lot more sticky out front of the car than my Alpha, but actual wheels-wise, it's just a dead heat. In all of our times doing versatility, have not seen this one come up before. Not that close. We had close, but not that close. Either way, Chatty Beast would take victory with that Focus. Me and Ninetails sharing, I guess, a joint second place in that one. Hell of a spectacular finish. Our third and final race, we would head to the Virginia International Raceway, the full layout. So the Bugatti wanted to have a bit more of a fun race, pulled over to let the field go and have to work his way back up when some peculiar lag would occur. A Ferrari 166 reappeared in the side of a Transit, causing that to flip. As that flipped, it took a poor fair lady Z for a tumble as well. That was two cars rolled before they even got to the first corner, through some weird lag. I've not seen that sort of lag happen before so much. We see cars jitter around and whatnot, but 1 minute Ferrari was, well, not where it was, and then suddenly upside down. Not a good day for those two cars. It is sometimes the way it goes. Anyway, this circuit, not one we have tended to use. However, wanted to go somewhere different, and this being a track that is tended not to be raced. It's a vicious circuit, Virginia, very, very fast down this back stretch. The Crown Vic that we're following here had a lot of speed, but you really, especially not on the opening lap, don't want to be going side by side. Throw those S's. With these kind of cars, it's going to be mostly flat out down there. Maybe with some of the more difficult to drive ones, you'll have to have a bit of a lift, but certainly with these race tyre shod cars, you're going to be flat out all the way through the S's. Scary section of the track. However, aside from the peculiar, weird, laggy incidents of cars tumbling over just after the start line, the rest of the field actually made it through very, very nice and cleanly. And again, this is another circuit that, because we don't run it very often whatsoever. Quite a few people might, well, it's not a circuit that's run very often in many places, might not be massively experienced with this. I know I'm certainly not, but there we go. With the nature of this circuit, of course, straight line speed was going to be helpful. If you struggled down the straights, well, there's a lot of them at this circuit. However, there are still plenty of nasty corners. This Kia Stinger was slower than the Holden down those straights, but being able to be that bit braver, that bit later on the brakes into turn 1. You can see the gap, in fact, the Kia can make up in these corners. Yeah, you need a good mixture of straight line speed, but you also need to be able to have confidence in your car through some of the faster corners. I had a good start, and my 8C was proving to be a really rather fast vehicle at this circuit, as I managed to outdrag the Ferrari for the lead. The Alfa, again, continuing to be a monster for its straight line speed. It's not so much its top speed, it's how quickly it got there. The Ferrari actually wasn't that much slower than me top end wise, but I got there a lot quicker than that Ferrari. The Ferrari, though, was a little bit easier to get through the corner, so while I did take the lead down the main straights, the 250 would fight back heading into these final turns. I thought I got it covered off, but as we head around that last corner, the Ferrari jumped a huge way across the curb on two wheels, launching itself trying to get up the inside. Again, though, another acceleration zone. Compromised me maybe a tiny bit, having to take a slightly wider line, but nothing really major for me. Unfortunately, I would undo everything all myself. All of the hard work would go down the drain when I couldn't quite pull the car up in time. Got a little bit too confident in the braking ability of my 8C, although the Ferrari would then get a big wheel spin moment. While the two of us at the front would start fighting, third would, well, cause quite the trade. A Jaguar was holding on to third. From a Crown Vic, a Ford Transit, a Ford Falcon were all involved in this. And it wasn't just the Jaguar kind of holding everybody up. The Crown Vic was fighting with the Transit now having a look around the outside, not really likely again to pull that one off, and now of course the Crown Vic's got to defend from the Transit. It can't go and try and attack the Jag when you've got a van all over the back of you, as I again outdragged the Ferrari down the straight and would lose the place later on in the lap. The Transit with the little bit more straight line speed, able to finally get the pass done on that Crown Vic. The Falcon actually got a lot of speed down this back straight as well. You've got to spot the braking point. It's a horrible corner because you're braking long before you really see where the turn goes. The Transit not so good through the corners, but once you've got ahead, it's a little bit difficult through this sort of wiggly section to get a pass completed. We continued to fight, and this would be a race-long battle between my Alfa Romeo and the 250 Testarossa. It was proving a little difficult to keep a pass completed against the Ferrari. I definitely had the speed, but there were places where I just wasn't quite wanting to go too wide, certainly with a little bit of time to go. This was on the penultimate lap. I get a very, very good run heading down towards the S's. I can pull up alongside, but I know if I do this, you're going to end up forcing it too wide. And with more opportunities to go, I figured that the better idea was not to try and force that manoeuvre. When you've still got a lap and a half to go, that's a very, very risky one to pull off. Then we get a big two-wheel moment from the car across the curbs. There was plenty of kind of old versus new battles in these. We've seen it all evening. With the new cars, tends to be the better handling cars, the old cars tending to be the ones that would out-drag them, out-accelerate them. Holden Sandman versus another one of the Jags. With the way that the PI works in the game, is always likely to be the case. You know, when you stick the race tyres on the more modern cars, they don't have so much PI to work with in terms of the power parts. The Sandman just manages to get the car stopped. You can see how difficult some of these things would be to drive around this circuit. The Jag could then carry all of the speed through the corners, but wasn't quite able to getting into a position to fight back. As we headed on towards the final race at the front, it would be a very, very familiar sight as once more the Ferrari would defend the inside on the run down towards turn 1. Despite our battling like this, third would drop back, mainly because there was a big train going on behind them as well. Yeah, I kept getting stuck on the outside of turn 1 with the Ferrari defending, which is, you know, perfectly fair enough. I tried it, couldn't quite make it work, and the issue is I could get a good run out of turn 1, but again, it would be a cutback. I'd be stuck trying to go around the outside. And while I had a good amount of grip in the 8C, all things considered, it wasn't enough to make that one. And I didn't have enough track experience either to make that one work. I knew where I had to be close. If I could be close heading onto this back straight on the final lap, I wasn't going to be lifting. This was a good opportunity. If I could get ahead here, I would then lead heading onto the second of the long straights and pull a nice tasty gap towards the final corners. So there was no lifting from the 8C this time, and I was fast enough to be clear just of the Testarossa by the time we got to the S's. And at the end of the day, the Ferrari's going to want to fall back into line, isn't going to want to try and force the point at a place where you might end up pinging off a tyre bundle and drop from second all the way back, because the Ferrari still has some corners where it is very fast. He actually came from a long way back. I was not expecting there to be a Ferrari on my inside around those next couple of corners. I did a very good job of getting it stopped, but this is where the 8C was good. Down this long straight, I can try and build a gap. I knew I wasn't the best under brakes, not knowing this circuit well enough, kind of coming off of this straight, but if I was far enough ahead, I could afford to be just that little bit cautious, make sure I get the 8C stopped, make sure I get it turned, not put a wheel on the grass somewhere. There's a little bit of two-wheeled action from the Alfa Romeo, and it did like to do that, although it wasn't horrendous. It wasn't the worst car I've ever had to deal with in terms of going up on its side. As we headed up towards the final corner, the gap was a nice and safe one. Nice and safe one as I slide the car slightly onto the start-finish straight. It had been a fantastically exciting race for me with the 8C, and the Alfa had worked very, very well around this track as I would take victory from the Ferrari. A very, very good fun battle, although perhaps the most excitement would go on for third. The Jag would actually have a little bit of a margin back to, well, the Ford pairing. A Ferrari Bugatti caught up to this group, as had a classic Volvo as well. The Transit, with its huge amounts of speed, was looking for a way past the Crown Vic. The Crown Vic would go defensive down the straight. The Transit would get things wrong over a crest, as it would wobble from side to side with that incredibly high centre of mass, and as it slid across the grass, that was a Transit down. The battle for third, well, it wasn't going to be the Transit. That was broken in a tyre bundle. The Jag's lack of straight line speed did put the Crown Vic right behind it as they came into this final section. The Ferrari, the Bugatti, the Falcon, and so on were all not that far away. The Crown Vic tried to carry as much speed through these final corners as he could, would just about draw alongside with the Jaguar, but the road does curve slightly, and the Jag could just keep it as they went across the line. The Ferrari would hold off the Bugatti behind them. It was a manic race. Again, at a circuit which we haven't really used in a university community and so on. It actually proved to be really, really rather good fun. So to the podium, I would take victory with that classic Alfa Reglisco. Settles for second with the Ferrari, while Muri's Jaguar would just hold on to third place. I was thoroughly impressed with the Alfa Romeo. I built the car with the expectation of it being incredibly difficult to control through the corners, but hoping for it to be monstrously fast down the straights. It was very quick, and actually wasn't that bad to drive at all when it got to the turns. I wonder how fast it would be in a general B-Class lobby, this sort of car. It might be something I have to try at some point, because, yeah, I really like the 8C. It had Lime Rock was a little bit difficult for it. That's perhaps not so surprising, such a pure handling circuit. But, yeah, it was one of the fastest cars in all of the races. Even at the pure handling circuit, it did have some very, very good pace. That, though, is going to be it for this versus the community. The next one, that is going to be held on Thursday, the 5th of April. We are going to go racing with some cycled production cars. If you want to take part in that, then you can via our forums. There'll be a link in the description of this video. Find the FailRace versus the community section, and you can sign up in there. That, though, is going to be it from me. Thank you very much for watching, and until next time, goodbye.